If you clicked into this, consider yourself lucky, because I'm going to explain finally why nobody gives a fuck about your business. And I mean that in a nice way, because I want to help you understand and fix the problem. Because if you can understand why nobody gives a fuck, why nobody's listening, well, if you understand why, well, then you can make them listen. You can make them buy your stuff. You can make them follow your content. You can produce whatever behavioral response you want. And I recommend that you listen up, because there's a reason why you clicked into this video. And I think you're smart enough to know that reason is because you don't have all the answers yet. You don't know why some people are getting ahead. You know, people like Alex Hormozi, the big personal brands, why people listen to him and not you. Why no matter how much effort you put in, it still seems irrelevant. Why your business model may not seem to be working. Basically, this will explain why you're not getting that traction. And unfortunately, for the people who think that they do know it all, who decide to skip by this, who have better things to be doing, who will continue scrolling, looking for the answer, or, trying to figure out some fucking hack, they're going to experience these problems forever. So what I would recommend is put your phone on Do Not Disturb, because this is going to be the best marketing lesson that you'll ever receive. It's one of the best that I ever received. You see, the thing is with this, it does not matter how much money you have. It does not matter how many videos you produce. It does not matter how good you look, how much resources, how much time, how much effort. That is all irrelevant if you don't understand this one variable. Like, it does not matter. So you're going to want to listen up and grab a notepad, because this is the exact strategy, not tactic, but the exact strategy that my business, outsourcecmo.com, used to generate 6 figures in consultant fees in less than 12 months, which may not seem like a lot when you compare it to what most of these guys online make, okay, all these millionaire fucking gurus or whatever. But in comparison, I'd spent 4 to 5 years trying to build an agency, a marketing agency, and I got nowhere, never even came close to that. And then I was able to ditch that, walk away, build this business to 6 figures in less than 12 months. So you can see how effective it is. You can see how effective it is in comparison. I'm using the same strategy to build winnerswin.com, which is just about to launch. It's the exact same principle that we use when we consult with clients. In fact, it's a key pillar of the Core 4 marketing system, and we refuse to launch any campaign until we're clear on this, because all your marketing efforts are irrelevant if you don't have this dialed in. So if you commit to wrapping your head around this, everything in your business is going to get so much easier, from getting attention, from outmaneuvering your competition, from getting people to listen to you, from making sure that every time you run an ad, you make a piece of content that is worthwhile, that you get an ROI guaranteed on your time, on your effort, on your resources, on your money. And if you refuse to listen, don't say that I didn't tell you. So the first thing that we have to do is look at this objectively, because what we have in its essence is a marketing problem. We want to get our brand out to the world. We want people to hear us. We want to be memorable, but nobody seems to be listening. So it's important that we understand that, so we can start reverse engineering a strategy and take guesswork out of the equation. Now, the thing is, we have a marketing problem, but most people don't even know what marketing is. They can't even define marketing in its purest form. And if you can't define, or you don't know what marketing is in its essence, how do you expect to formulate a winning strategy when you don't even know or understand what it is that you're trying to achieve? You don't even know how to define it, right? I know for a fact that if I was to sit down with most marketers, or most people trying to build a business, or trying to have success in marketing in general, and I asked them to define what it is, they wouldn't be able to. So then what is marketing, all right? What is the definition? Well, I made this definition up. This is what marketing is to me. This is how I define it. And I would say it's pretty accurate, because I've had pretty good success in terms of building my own business and formulating strategies for clients based around this definition. I believe that marketing is the ability to effectively communicate an idea or a message to another person, get them to accept it and register it into their mind, and in turn produce a specific behavioral response That behavioral response in business, most of the time we want it to be a purchasing decision, but in this case, it could be any desired response that you want. It could be to hit a follow button. It could be to make a purchase. It could be to do whatever, okay? That is what marketing is, the ability to effectively communicate your idea, your message to another person, get them to receive it, which is very important because most people don't receive the message, and then in turn produce a specific behavioral response. That's what marketing is. And it's super important that we have a definition because that allows us to reverse engineer this so we can get good. So if we look at the two variables of marketing, we know that it's communication in its purest form and the recipient is the human mind. That's the second variable. So if we can understand the current state of communication in society and understand how that works, well, then we can navigate that better. And if we do the same with the human mind, well, then we can pair the two together, find synchronicity, and make them work. So that's what we should do. Let's look at the first half of this equation, which is communication. Let's look at the current state of communication. Let's look at communication for what it is. Because if you can wrap your head around this, then we've solved half of the problem. If we look at any of the problems on the planet right now, they could be solved with communication. Like, let's look at business failures. The reason why most businesses fail is because they can't effectively communicate their value to the market. If you look at wars, if you look at government issues, it's the failure on the head of nations, it's the failure of politicians to effectively communicate with each other and reach a mutual agreement. If you look at problems in the workforce, it's the failure between management and the staff to effectively communicate. You didn't get a promotion, failure to communicate. Even if you look at people in relationships, two people could be madly in love, but they could break up because they fail to effectively communicate their feelings to each other. And the crazy thing is, throughout the entire course of human existence, there's never been an easier way to communicate with each other. But yet, so many people fail to communicate effectively. So what is it that makes the difference? What is it that makes some people masters at communication, that allows them to get ahead, but yet so many people struggle? What is it that sets them apart, and how can we take a similar approach? I mean, we live in a world where there's so many communication channels available to us. There's no shortage of methods to deliver your message. So why is it so hard to get heard? Why is it so hard to get people to listen to us? And while this may sound counterintuitive, the reason for that is because communication has become the problem itself. Every year, our ability to communicate, our ability to send messages increases, but yet we're receiving less and less. You know, if you look at the marketing landscape in 2024, it's a lot different than how it was last year. It's a lot different than how it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago. This is how fast this is changing. The marketplace is not responding anymore to the strategies that worked in the past. And why is that? Well, the reason why that is because there's simply too much information. We now live in an over-communicated society, and communication itself has become the problem. And all you have to do is look at how much the communication channels and delivery methods are growing day on day, week on week, year on year. Okay, it's insane. You and I have never been as exposed to as much information, to as many messages as we are today, right? So I want to pull up a few stats just to give you context to this, and I don't know them off the top of my head, so I'm just going to hop onto the computer for a second. But if you think about this, okay, I've done the maths on this. In the US, in 2023 alone, digital ad spend, okay, so the amount of money spent on digital advertising, totaled $271 billion. It's projected to reach $298 billion in 2024, right? Now, I divided this up. On an individual level, if we divide that up, the spend per capita, okay, per head, that means each person, how much advertising they're exposed to out of all that, is $942.6 per year. Now, what that means is if you were to break that down and spend $1 million on advertising, well, out of your $1 million that you spend trying to communicate with the market, they would only ever see $3.15. Okay, that's how much would be spread out amongst everybody. Now, you need to take into account that's over 365 days, and they would already be exposed to like $939 of advertising already. So you can see what spending $1 million, the impact that would have. Very little. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we can talk about solutions in a minute, but that's just advertising. If we look at organic exposure to messages, if we look at the social media explosion and how many messages are being bombarded at the human mind there, like if we take TikTok, there's 95 million TikToks uploaded every single day. The average user spends about an hour every day on the platform consuming those messages. If you look at Instagram, there's 95 million uploads per day. On YouTube alone, they rack up 1 billion watch hours per day amongst 5 billion videos that are played. If you look at Spotify, there's 4.7 million podcasts on the platform. This is just a fraction of what the human mind is exposed to, because we're not even talking about offline yet. Think about when you leave your house, when you head into the store, how many products on the shelves, how many new packages, how many new logos, how many new books, how many text messages, how many signs on the windows, how many cars going by, how many labels. This is what the human mind is being bombarded with every single day. You've got the TV, you've got newspapers. From the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, the human mind is being bombarded with messages, with people trying to communicate with it 24/7. And I think it's safe to conclude, and this is important, I think it's safe to conclude that ways to communicate with people and the channels of communication are not slowing down. And the fact of the matter is, we're living in a new age. We're living in an age where trying to secure your spot, trying to carve your position in the mind is a fucking all-out battle. It's warfare. You're competing with businesses, you're competing with creators, you're competing with governments, you're competing with the media outlets for the 5 to 6 inches of space, the 5 to 6 inches of grey matter in the mind. That's what you're competing for. And let me tell you this, it's a fucking war. And these people are willing to do whatever it takes to win. Now, with that said, here's where the problem arises. Here's where the issue lies. While there's no doubt that the volume of communication and the battle for attention is not going to slow down anytime soon, the problem is, how is the human mind going to cope with this growth? Because any sane mind who tried to intake all that information would end up in the madhouse, right? So yes, we know that the volume of communication is ever increasing, but tell me this, who is working on increasing the capacity of the brain to retain all this information? Because while that's increasing, the valve to intake it all is getting tighter and tighter. Okay, your brain is actually absorbing less and less information than ever before. And until somebody like Elon Musk and fucking Neuralink Technologies, or someone knows how to add more than 24 hours to the day and defy the laws of physics, the brain is not fucking taking in any more information. So it may sound great that all these communication channels, all these communication methods are increasing. The human brain and its capacity to take in the information is not. And this is where the issue is. This leads us to the second part of the equation. We've just looked at the first part, which is the current state of communication. Now we need to look at the second variable, which is the human mind, because it's not in a good place right now. And the best way to think of this is, and I need you to think of this, by the way, is think of the mind like a hard drive with a limited amount of storage space, because they operate in the exact same way. The brain is essentially a hard drive, and the brain can only take on information at the expense of what's already on there. The brain operates in the very same way. If it wants to take on more information, if the hard drive's full, it needs to offload what's already on there. Now, if the brain and the human mind tried to override its capacity, if it was to say, you know what, I'm just going to try and fit all this information in, it would crash. It would cause like a fucking major traffic jam up in your head. See, the mind has a limited bandwidth, it has a limited capacity, and it can't be overstretched. So while all that communication stuff is forever increasing, it's not going to slow down and we can't control it. The brain isn't able to deal with it all, okay? You don't have infinite memory. You are not going to allow all that information to come in, because if you did, you'd go fucking insane. You wouldn't be able to cope. And it's only when you understand the nature of this problem, it's only when you understand that communication is the thing that's actually preventing you from getting into the mind, that's preventing you from being memorable. Only then, when you appreciate that, you can work on a solution. Now, you might be wondering, why haven't you went insane yet? Why hasn't your brain crashed if there's so much information? And this is the good part about the brain and what it does for us. It wants to protect you, okay? It's like your best fucking friend. It's always going to do what's best for you. It wants you to survive. And it knows all this fucking information is being hammered at you. So in order to protect you, it was smart enough to develop a defense mechanism. And this is the reason why you don't take on all of the information. The brain rejects most of the information that it comes across because the mind likes to keep things simple. It doesn't like complicated. And in order to keep things that way, in order to keep things simple in such an over-communicated society, what it does is it oversimplifies and generalizes information. That is the brain's defense mechanism. It will generalize information so it doesn't have to take everything in. And that's the issue. That's the reason why nobody gives a fuck about your business. It's not because the information is bad. It's not because, you're a bad person. It's because you are not getting around this defense mechanism. You are not getting by this generalization process that the brain is carrying out. And I'll give you an example of this, an easy way to prove it. Let's say you're scrolling on social media, okay? This is the easiest example. You're scrolling on social media and you see all the motivational people, right? You fucking might see me pop up in there from time to time, right? Sometimes I fall into the category of those idiots. I try my best not to. But anyways, you're scrolling along and you see all these motivational videos and you say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to fucking keep scrolling. The reason why you keep scrolling, and you'll probably only stop if it's like David Goggins, Andy Frisella, or whoever, is because your brain automatically assumed, it generalized all those videos that you scrolled by, and it says, you know what, I already know what the fuck that is, right? That is the generalization happening in front of you in real time. Now, if we were to take another example, if we look at business gurus, when you see guys talking about information online, talking about growing business, right, again, probably someone like me, what's going on is you're seeing this and you're saying, oh, it's another fucking one of these guys, they're trying to sell me a course, keep scrolling, I'm not listening. Your brain just becomes numb to it, okay? That's what's going on. Your brain is numb, it's generalizing, and it's oversimplifying. Now, the issue is, there's guys like me who actually know what the fuck they're talking about. And we get categorized, even myself. Your brain will categorize me the same as somebody else unless I know how to get around that defense mechanism. That's how it works. And I can guarantee you this. I can guarantee it. The reason why nobody is listening to you, the reason why nobody gives a shit about your business, the reason why certain people are getting ahead and you're not, the reason why you put so much effort into your business and you're not getting the traction, you're not getting the ROI that you want, is because you're not getting around the generalization process. That is why. The brain is not registering your information, your brand, your message, your marketing as worthwhile. And you do this too with everybody else. You're all doing it subconsciously. It's the reason why you don't take in all the videos, all the podcasts, all the fucking signs, all the stuff in the supermarket. This is why. You assume that you already know what that is. And you say, you know what, that's irrelevant or it's not important. And this leads us to the next point. The brain will accept information, but it has to be, and this is very important, the brain will accept information that it has prior experience with or knowledge of already. But there's a key requirement. It has to be information that is relevant, that has experience or prior knowledge of, but the key requirement is it has to be something new. Okay, if your brain sees something that is relevant, but it's not new, it says, you know what, fuck this, I'm not taking that on board. Okay, again, it's like a hard drive. It has very valuable space. It is not offloading information for more of the same shit. It wants relevant. It wants something that it's looking for, but it has to be new. This is exactly why trying to change someone's mind is impossible, okay? If you're going to use advertising, which is a weak force in general, if you're going to use advertising to try and change somebody's mind, to try and push a new idea, that is a one-way road to failure, okay? Because essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to put something new into the mind. And we know that the mind only accepts information that it has prior knowledge or experience of, and it wants it in a new way. If you're coming along and trying to change it completely with something that it fucking doesn't have a clue about, that only ends one way. And that way is not in your favor. Mind changing and trying to force something new into the mind is a fucking surefire way to advertising and marketing disaster. So never try to do that. That's just context, and I think you need to know that. Now, there is one exception to what I just said. There is one exception. There is one time where the brain will accept information that it knows nothing about. And this is exactly why people listen to the news. The reason why people will listen to the news, right? They've never been exposed to that information before, but the brain knows that that is so fucking important, okay? That's just hardwired into you that you don't know what the news is about to tell you, okay? So the news is the one exception that people will break this rule. And that's why the news is such a, we could say, a good form of marketing or propaganda. The way it can sway so much opinion is because people listen to that because they believe it's important. That's the one exception. So with all that said, now the reason, back to the main point here, the reason why most people can't get ahead, the reason why most people can't carve a position in the mind is because they can't get around this generalization and oversimplification mechanism, okay, that's designed to protect you. Most brands are talking about shit that the brain has seen 1,000,000 times. And what happens is it's saying, okay, I've seen this 1,000,000 times. I'm not going to take on your information. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for something that's relevant and new. That's what it'll give up space for. Okay, so write that down. And while you're writing that down, I want to propose a question to you. And this is fucking important because this is going to dictate whether you're going to get an ROI or not on your communication efforts going forward. Do you think it's a good idea to continue investing time, money, energy, resources, all your efforts into producing content, producing marketing messages, to producing advertising campaigns, to communicate at all if you don't know how to get around that generalization filter? Do you think that's a good idea to continue wasting your time, applying sheer force just for the sake of it, only to never make a dent in another person's mind? Do you think that's a good idea, knowing what you know now? Like, this is just a matter of fact. If you don't know how to navigate around this mechanism, if you don't know how to not get generalized, you have zero chance, no matter what the fuck you do. So doesn't it make more sense to not communicate at all, not to invest your time, energy, resources, and efforts until you know how to actually get into the mind. Or you could continue your communication efforts, but I think you're smart enough to know now that all that is irrelevant, no matter how much money you have, no matter how good your content is, no matter how good the message is that you're delivering. It's not that you're a bad person, it's just that it's all irrelevant, it's all a waste of time until you know how to carve a path to find a gap. And until then, nobody's going to give a fuck about what you have to say. So the question now becomes, knowing what we know now, how do we carve out that position? How do we get into the mind? How do we cut through that process, that defense mechanism? Well, we need to remember what marketing is by definition. Marketing is the ability to effectively communicate your idea or message and get it accepted by the mind to produce a specific behavioral response. And on top of that, you also understand the current state of communication, how communication itself has become the problem that is preventing you, that is acting as the roadblock from getting into the mind, that is getting you caught up in this generalization process. And in order to cut through the bullshit, in order to not get generalized with the million other messages that it sees every day, all the bullshit, you need to present the brain with information that it has relevance with or prior experience, knowledge of, but it needs to be presented in a new way. And you're also smart enough to know and to keep in mind that you're not going to be able to create something new and put it into the mind unless you're the news. What you need to do, and what we're about to get into, is how to carve a position into the inner dialogue and present your message, your idea, your brand in a way that it says, you know what, I'm willing to offload some of the information that I have because I've never been exposed to this before. And how do you find that position? Well, I just want to say that this isn't about product positioning. This isn't the stuff that they teach you in college about, positioning a product placement. This isn't about, in fact, your business, your product, your service, none of that shit. This is about reality, and not your reality. More specifically, this is about the reality in the prospect's mind. That is the only thing that matters when it comes to finding an available gap. You need to accept the fact that whether you like it or not, most people like to think that they hold the key to the truth, okay? They like to think that they know how the world works and they can see order through their eyes. But let's ask the question, what really is reality? Okay? Reality, and this is important, write this down. Reality is merely perception, okay? Reality is different for each and every one of us. Reality is our beliefs and the stories we tell ourselves about why the world is the way that it is. And when you're trying to carve out a position in the mind and get around this defense mechanism, the only thing that matters is the reality and their perception of the world. You need to concentrate your efforts on how they view things. Not how they fucking view your product, not how good it is, not about your service, not about how great you are, but what they're currently perceiving, what they're currently seeing going on in the world. That's where you enter the conversation, because you need to remember the brain will listen to stuff that it has prior knowledge of or experience with, which is what their reality is. That's where you need to enter the conversation, because it will listen to you. And what you need to do then is you need to figure out, how can I enter the conversation with what they're already thinking about, but connect it in a new way to what I'm doing. Listen to me when I say this. Write it down again if you have to. Reality is perception. Do not try enter the conversation with something new. Do not try enter the prospect's mind with something that they're not thinking about. Okay? You are not going to change their mind. You are not going to change their reality. You are wasting your time. You need to enter. An elite marketer will enter the conversation that they're already having. You do not create something that doesn't exist. You take what exists already and you connect it in a new way to your message, to your product, to your service, to whatever it is you're trying to achieve. That is how you get by the defense mechanism. And this is where elite marketers excel. This is what separates the men from the boys. This is what separates the fucking women from the girls, is the ability to find that available gap and deliver, communicate their message effectively in a way that the brain has not been exposed to before. And until they know how to do that, they know that it's better to not communicate at all, because you're just wasting your time. Now look, this explanation is pretty fucking in-depth, okay? And I could talk about this for another 2-3 hours. To be honest, I could talk about it all day in terms of how to formulate strategy, because there is predictability to doing this. But what's most important here, and I don't want to end this just yet, but what's more important here is, now you know why, number one, nobody listens to you, and number two, why nobody gives a fuck about your business. You know that it's not because you're a bad person or you're saying the wrong thing. It's because communication itself has become the problem, and that's why you're not getting through. And now you know it's better to not communicate at all unless you have a clear path to carve your way into the mind. And as I said, there is predictable ways to do this. We do it at outsourcecmo.com. There is methodology to finding the available gaps, to figuring out what the current reality is, finding the angle where you're going to enter the conversation. And this is something that we refer to as identifying the prospect's unmet needs, or in your case, it could be anybody, but identifying their unmet needs. These are the conversations that they're having subconsciously that they don't even know they're aware of. This is what Henry Ford did. The subconscious conversation that they were having at the time back in the day was people wanted to get around faster. If Henry Ford had have ended the conversation, with another fucking horse, which was the popular thing back in the day, if he had just looked at it through a normal lens, they would have said, it's just another fucking horse. Someone promising me a faster horse. But Henry was able to identify the market's unmet needs. The conversation they were having in their head was, I want to get around faster and I'm sick of people fucking selling me the next best horse. So what did Henry Ford do? Well, he said, hey, I can help you get around faster, and I'm not going to fucking sell you another horse. And what happened? That was the start of Ford Motor Company. He took what already existed and connected it to something new. Look at Steve Jobs. He did the exact same thing. Steve Jobs, he knew that there was a fucking world full of music enthusiasts that were, used to CDs, Walkmans, all that type of stuff. He took what they wanted, which was to listen to music easier, and he connected it to something new, which was the iPod. And this leads me to my last point, because I made a promise at the start of this. I would explain how Alex Hormozi and some of these big guys, how they use the same strategy for their personal brands. Okay, it's the exact same thing. So I'm going to fulfill my promise. I'll do it in 60 seconds, and I'll explain why Alex Hormozi grew and popped off the way that he did and so fast. So in 60 seconds, Alex Hormozi was putting out business content. Now, at the time, every fucking business guru was doing the exact same thing. And I can bet you at one point, Hormozi, well, it's just fucking a fact, Hormozi was not as big as he was at one point. So what happened? Hormozi's making content, giving business advice. People aren't listening. He's not getting traction. Why? Well, because the market at the time was fucking sick of seeing all these business gurus posting content. And what they were more sick of was that everyone was trying to sell them a course. It was disingenuous. There was no authenticity. It was always kind of like a bait and snatch type scenario. Hey, I'll give you this bit of value, but I fucking want your money at the end of it. Now, I don't know if Hormozi said this directly, but I know that this was subconsciously, I'm guessing, the way that he was thinking. He said, I actually know what the fuck I'm talking about. He said, but people aren't listening to me. He said, they think I'm trying to sell them a fucking course when I'm not like any of these people at all. I actually have my own business. I don't fucking sell courses. But the conversation that they were having in their head was, all these fucking gurus are trying to sell me a course, but what I do want is helpful business advice, okay? The brain wanted knowledge of something that it had experience with, but it wanted it in a new way. So Hormozi would have got sick of being generalized. He wouldn't have been making it around that defense mechanism. So he was smart enough, whether he made a conscious decision or an unconscious decision, he was smart enough to say, you know what? I need to fucking let these guys know that I'm not like the rest of them. I need to fucking carve out a position for myself. So what did Hormozi do? He said, well, I'm gonna fucking put in my bio, in all my videos, the first thing they see is, hey, I have nothing to sell you. That's what Hormozi did. He made sure to enter the conversation that they were already having in their mind. He said, look, I don't fucking sell courses. I'm not trying to sell you anything. So people are like, what? Holy shit. Fuck, this guy's trying to give me helpful business advice and he's not trying to sell me anything? Wow, this is new. Hormozi was able to tap into what the reality was at the time. He didn't try and change their mind. He didn't try to push something new on them. He entered the conversation they were already having in their head and he connected it to what his message was. And when you find a position that nobody has tapped into, man, this shit can pop off fast, okay? And this is, as I said, this is where elite marketers excel, is knowing how to do this. And the funny part of this, the bit that makes me laugh, is that you see all those same business gurus, you see all these people online, you know, whether it be short form, whether it be people just making content, they think that the reason why Hormozi is successful is because of his captions, because of his videos, because he wears a tank top in his videos, because of his content, you know, all this type of stuff. They're trying to reverse engineer all this, whatever he's doing. When really, the reason why he popped off is because he spoke to their unmet needs and connected it, okay? Whereas everyone else was just getting generalized. That's really why he popped off. Same with Andrew Tate. If we look at Andrew Tate for a second, the reason why Tate popped off was because he did the exact same thing. He entered the conversation that the people were already having in their minds. What Tate did was he realized that the conversation a part of the market were having was, you know, the stories that they were telling themselves was that the world was against them and there's a reason other than myself as to why I'm not having success. And Tate consciously or subconsciously knew this and he spoke to that and he said, hey, I fucking agree with what you're saying. There is a fucking enemy out there to get you and I have a way to fucking help you beat them or whatever he's trying to sell. That's what Tate did. But again, you have people online who will try be like Andrew Tate, who will try be like Alex Hormozi, who will replicate everything about their videos. They think it's some sort of hack. And these people will forever be generalized because, again, if you're second, you might as well be last. The brain only cares about new. And you're smart enough to know that now. You can go fucking replicate, try and do what they're doing. They already occupy a position in the mind. So when you come along and you try, you know, do what they're doing, well, the brain just automatically generalizes you. It oversimplifies what you're saying and it says, you know what, I'm not giving up space for this person. But you're smart enough to know that now. And that's just the way the marketing landscape is in 2024. We live in an over-communicated society, but hopefully now you have a better understanding to navigate your way around this, because there's plenty of available gaps. And this is something that you're going to have to go through a few times. You're going to have to study what I've talked about here. This is probably, if not the most valuable, or if not the second most valuable marketing lesson that I ever learned. Even if you look at how I applied this, let's take outsource CMO, for example. I knew that the current conversation that business owners were having in their head, because I was fucking hands on the ground, I was hearing this all the time, was I would run ads, or let's say at the time I was desperate, I would outreach to business owners. And the conversation that I would usually, I would be exposed to was, oh, another fucking marketing agency. I'm fucking sick of these marketing agencies, you know, they're all the fucking same. And this was really annoying because I was very fucking good at what I was doing. But the problem was, it didn't matter how good I was being generalized just like the rest of them. And 80% of the agencies out there are dog shit. 10% are good, and the other 10%, they outprice the business owners to work with them. Okay, so they can't really get access to really good marketing. So I said, you know what? I have not got a fucking chance with this marketing agency stuff. I need to come in with a new approach. I can deliver the same thing. This is the whole thing about marketing. As I said, reality is perception. If I can just change the way I'm perceived, if I can deliver the same thing, because all I know is marketing, okay, that's my best skill. If that's all I know, I can't change industry, but what I can do is I can change how I'm perceived. So what I did was I said, okay, conversation they're having in their head is that they fucking hate marketing agencies. They're sick of them. I'm going to enter with that. So what I did was I took the anti-agency position. I said, hey, you know what? See those fucking marketing agencies? I fucking hate them too. You know what? You have every right to hate those guys. Marketing agencies are a liability. You deserve an experienced partner. And that actually became our positioning statement. Our positioning statement became, marketing agencies are a liability. You deserve an experienced partner. You can see the two sides of this. This is the conversation they're having. Agencies are a fucking liability. Connect it to what I was offering, an experienced partner. Give them something new, outsourced CMO. Hey, screw the marketing agencies. They don't have your best interests at heart. You deserve experience. You need an outsourced CMO. Now they're thinking, what the fuck is an outsourced CMO? Geez, you know what? That guy is right. Marketing agencies are terrible. I fucking don't like those guys. I do deserve an experienced partner. What's this guy on about with the outsourced CMO? Now they listen to me. Makes sense? I wasn't being generalized anymore, whereas when I was positioned as an agency, when that was the message that I was trying to communicate, I was just being generalized. And this is what the biggest brands, the biggest companies, the biggest personal brands, this is all what they know how to do. And you can apply this to business, you can apply this to fucking politics, you can apply this to relationship, you can apply this to getting people to do whatever it is you want them to do. Again, you know, that's what marketing is, to effectively communicate your idea to produce a specific behavioral response in return. And that's what the biggest people in the world know how to do. They can get so much attention, they can amass so many views, they can get people to do what they want because they know how to enter the conversation that they're having in their mind. And what you'll see from here on out as well is you'll see the likes of Grant Cardone, Alex Hormozi talking about promote. Attention is the new currency. You know, money follows attention. And listen, they're not wrong. Money does follow attention. You need to promote, okay? Best service does not beat most known. Most known will always win, okay? But what these guys don't tell you is you can fucking promote all you want, but that's fucking irrelevant if you are not gonna have a position carved out ahead of time, if you don't know how to get around that generalization filter. That's what these guys don't tell you, and that's what you know now. And remember, the mind is a battleground. Every day, businesses, politicians, the news, they are fighting for the space, the 6 inches of fucking grey matter between your head. That's what they're fighting for. And the way to do it is to remember that reality is just perception. And if you understand what I talked about in this video, I'm telling you, you can beat everybody.